Hey everyone, I'm incredibly excited for today's video. We're going to be doing a Lucia guide. We're going to talk about the math that I did personally. I double checked, triple checked. I mean, the formulas are really simple for Lucia. And I'm going to simplify the shit out of this, so don't worry. But yeah, I did everything because I am also going to be building 3 Lucias. Everything that I want to know to build my Lucia, as well as if I need to make any changes for my Yixuans, I pretty much did all the calcs and all that stuff. So yeah, for those that know me, I've been testing Lucia as well as 2.3 for now over 45 days. And before we go any further forward, I'm going to be picking a random subscriber who has hit the like on this video and left a comment about their favorite trust scene in the menu. I'm gonna give you guys three months of monthly passes, as well as the most premium battle pass. We'll talk about why, but yeah, I'll be picking that real soon. Anyways, let's get into the video. So today we're gonna really simplify things, and the first thing that we need to talk about is, what does Lucia provide? All right, I'm not gonna talk about all her skills and read it with the term like whim and harmony and ether veil. That's just gonna confuse you guys. I'm gonna break it down really simple. She is very simple to play, and some quirks and features, as well as some things that you can min max. I'll show you combat and all that stuff, and of course the math on how to build her properly. So anyways, what does Lucia bring at M0? She brings max HP of 5%, 20% increased damage. I'm not going to talk about like durations. It's very automatic. And there's 30% crit damage coming from her additional ability. As long as you bring a stunner friend or a rupture friend, you're gonna meet that criteria. Oh, and before we go any further, this is early access, so if anything changes, like for example this 24,000 initial HP, which you can see in the character screen, for the maximum amount of sheer force of 900, if there are any changes, I'll put in the pinned comment. Now if you also pick up her signature Engine, that's going to be additional 25% increased damage, as well as additional 15% max HP. So with one copy of her Engine, that's 15 plus 5, that's 20, and that max HP coming from her signature Engine is roughly about the same as the amount of sheer force you get from Astra's 1200 attack. So on the left hand side is what Lucia brings, and right hand side is what Astra brings. I discussed it in the previous video. Now to simplify how Lucia works and how to get those juicy buffs that she provide, all right, let's simplify this first. Of course there are advanced tips and tricks, but to get you a little bit wet on how she works, she has a special attack meter, and you want to fill it up. And there are multiple ways to do so, but the simplest way I'm just going to show you right now is her X special, if she has enough energy, and it's going to prompt a quick assist, and you go into Yixuan. Now she has this aftershock ability that uses her special attack meter, that shiny purple. It gets depleted once every 8 seconds. Now this we'll talk about later, how that's going to affect her Engine choices and all that, but once every 8 seconds she's going to do an aftershock, and that aftershock is going to be random, which we'll talk about when we talk about our skill upgrades. And as you see with the Yixuan, you see those buffs, they're refreshing automatically. Now she fell out of gauge. We're going to repeat that, skip the basic attack, and then go in and rinse and repeat. That was a really simplified explanation of how Lucia works. Now there are of course tips and tricks and how to generate her special attack meter. And as you can see on the left hand side, basic attack at the last hit, as you can see, we're gonna do the basic attack on the last hit. Boom, she generates 40. And if we scroll down, I love this site because you can pretty much change it depending on the level. If that changes anything, you can see the day's contribution, the damage. And as you can see right here, Dell's counter gives 20 as well. And her special attack, not the X special, just the tap without the energy, gives 20 as well every 5 seconds. And her X special, when you have energy, gives 60. So there are multiple ways to get it. So I have 40 from the basic attack sequence, and I'm going to X special, and that gives the full meter, and I get the quick assist prompt. So there are multiple ways to fill up her special attack meter, as well as spending it. And the reason why I'm talking about this is because everyone's going to be gearing a little bit differently, especially when it comes to energy regen, and that's going to be very personal preference. Another way is to use her ultimate chain attack button right there. I love that animation. You get the 100 meter right there, and you could use it even while it is full. If we scroll down here, right, she'll just, even if it's full, you could use it again. as you see on the left-hand side, it's gonna save that and re-enter. So let's deplete the 100 first. And then look at that, it replenished because you used the ultimate while it was full. And let's say you have 80, you need a quick 100. You could just, even without energy, you could just special attack, boop, and then that every 5 seconds gives 20 right there. So there are multiple ways to get the special attack meter as well as spending it. And the reason why this is important is because of your energy regen. If you're not generating energy fast enough, then you need to know how to generate her special attack meter. And secondly, because of her 4-piece this set, because you want to refresh this every 25 seconds. I've tested this multiple times. If you're looking down below and looking at some legs, yeah, that just... Hey guys, Editor Zeals here. I took down the video because I was not happy how I described how Weeping Cradle works with Lucia. So what is the Weeping Cradle? It is the S rank non-limited Engine. And as you can see at level 60, we have the base attack and the pen ratio. So we have the R1 up to R5. I did calcs for both, but at R1, we start with that 10% damage increase, which ramps up, and this ramps up to 20.2 at R1 and 39.8 R5. Now that sounds all good on paper, but why I had to take down the video and reshoot this part was because if we go into Miyabi, now we're gonna wait for the aftershock. We're gonna just scratch it a little bit, scratch a little bit. So Lucia, every 8 seconds, she's going to do her aftershock when she's in dream state. And as you can see, Miyabi's basic attack 1 is ramping up, and then boom, it falls off. And then every 8 seconds, we get the Weeping Cradle buff, which ramps up, and boom, it's gone. So while Weeping Cradle does proc and it does ramp up every time Lucia does aftershock, I mean, you can manually switch into her as well if you really want to do that. But anyways, yeah, so with the aftershocks, they do proc and it does ramp up and then it just falls off. So there are going to be times where it's on or off. And before we go into the spreadsheet, let me show you guys her signature engine, the Dreamlit Hearth. So we have the base attack here, as well as the HP, that 30%, which will help you get to that 24,000 initial HP. And at R1, we have the 25% damage increase, as well as 15% increased max HP. And at R5, it ramps up to 40 with 24%. So maximum of 29% increased max HP. So with all that information in our mind, let's address the big questions when it comes to shopping for Lucia. How big of an upgrade is Lucia versus Astra? So Astra with their signature versus Lucia with their signature, there is a 34.1% difference without outside influence and other dilutions like Deadly Assault buffs. Now, the second question, how good is Lucia's signature engine? So with Lucia and her signature engine, Yixuan is doing this amount of damage. Unbuffed, without Lucia and Lucia's signature engine, she was doing 17.6 million damage. This is like recorded in a fight. So with the Lucia and her signature engine, it ramps up to 38 million damage. Now, what is this? Lucia plus Weeping Cradle R1 with the buff down. So if what I highlighted right here, if that buff is down, like I showed you with the example with Miyabi, there is a 20.65% difference between it being down, Weeping Cradle R1 being down, and her signature engine. Now, Lucia aftershocks every 8 seconds, and she starts that Weeping Cradle buff of 10% right there. What is the difference between that and her signature engine at that exact moment? It is 15.86%. And when it fully ramps up to 20.2 for that very short time, the difference is 11.35%. So this is what I really wanted to capture that I feel like I didn't really express very well in the previous video. So depending on these different snapshots, the Weeping Cradle versus Lucia signature engine, there are huge differences. Now, M1 Lucia, what it does in short is that it provides 18 res shred and 5% decibel generation to your party members. Now, I didn't put that in the calculation, but we'll talk about that soon. So M1 Lucia with Weeping Cradle R1 and the buff being down, it is doing, of course, less than Lucia and her signature. But once the buff activates, it is beating Lucia and her signature by 1.8%. So it kind of like averages out. If you kick in the decibel generation on a longer fight like Deadly Assault, and if you have a little friend called Ju Fufu, if you have M1 Lucia and you bring Ju Fufu along with her, they're going to have great decibel synergy. So Yixuan at M0 or even at M2, she's going to be pretty much popping off with all this synergy coming from M1 Lucia as well as Ju Fufu. And also in consideration is the fact that Wenjins are a little bit easier to get with the 75-25. The max pity count is lower. So with this information, you need to do the risk managing and the decision making yourself. If you have any more questions regarding that, you could ask me on stream because I'm going to be going M6 R5 as usual with every character in this game and every other game. But yeah, anyways. And what about Kaboom R5 for A ranks? So Yixuan with core passive and additional ability. Without Kaboom, 27.5 million. With Kaboom R5 with full stacks. So even if we are shilling Kaboom like crazier with max copies and max stacks, the difference is only 3.9%. Now, before we go any further, I just equipped this unfettered game ball, which is from the battle pass. When you have max copies, you get 20% crit rate whenever the equipper's attack triggers an attribute counter effect. This is some old ZZZ text. So if Lucia equips this game ball and fights a Deadly Assault boss that is weak to ether, then yeah, all units crit rate against the struck enemy increases by 20%. So this is why I'm kind of doing that giveaway for a battle pass, premium battle pass for a lucky subscriber that did everything that I told you guys to do at the beginning of this video. Yeah, so this isn't completely free to play option, but it's pretty good. If you have this and you're fighting against ether weak bosses, you might have to tinker the rest of your team's crit rate so that you're not over critting. Now, you can pretty much tell where the problem exists with this Wenjin. What if you're not fighting against ether weak and retinkering your Yixuan's crit rate through main stat and substats? It's just so annoying and really hard to calculate as well because there are so many different variables. So this isn't just an honorable mention for those that got the battle pass, picked this Wenjin, and they don't want to go after her signature Wenjin. And maybe you like to spend the time to tinker and then max against the ether weak boss. You want to like kind of redistribute your stats on your Yixuan so you're not over critting. For those that kind of like that, this is the honorable mention. Now we're gonna talk about a diss set, but also Yixuan as well, so don't just skip around. So as for Lucia, you want to go with the 4-piece Moonlight Lullaby. Now you don't need 24,000 initial attack, as you can see in the character screen. I have 23,000. You don't need 24,000. That 24,000 is the maximum. You're still giving sheer force just a little bit less if you don't have 24,000. Now, if you have HP issues, if you're not rolling crazy discs like this with +5 HP, then you can go with the 2-piece Yunquei Tails. If you don't need the HP help because you have cracked discs, then you can go with the energy regen, 20% for more energy regen. And speaking of energy regen, do you need to get energy regen slot 6? That once again depends on your personal preference. I don't really have a hard time getting enough energy once she exits the dream state. And if I'm missing that little bit of energy that I need to use the X special, I could just do the basic attack sequence. And then that's gonna give me on the last hit, the 40 that I need for the special attack meter. And while basic attacking, it's gonna give me just that extra that I need to get the X special off, which gives that rest 60. So while that may take a little bit more time than coming out of her dream state and then immediately X special into going into basic attack, her last basic attack, and then that gives full 100 and you quick assist out, it's not the end of the world if you cannot X special right after coming out of her dream state. For me personally, I'm trying to find the right balance where I try to get rid of as much energy regen as possible, but of course you don't want to overdo that because that's going to be a little bit too clunky. So for me personally, I'm going to go with HP slot 6. That's going to help me get to my initial HP goal as well as increase my personal damage for Lucia. So personally for me, this is personal once again, with the 2-piece swing jazz, I might even think about dropping this for either crit rate or crit damage. Since I'm gonna be jacking my Lucia up a little bit different than most of the viewers. And by going HP slot 6, I can also go crits or crit damage main stat in slot 4 as well. As for substats, as you can see right there in 2.3 is highlighted, so HP percentage. And after you get to the 24,000 initial HP, you can go into a little bit more of Lucia's personal damage with crit damage. As for her skills, her X special is very important because it influences her sheer force buff. So if you get that to level 12, you get the max of 900. Her chain attack ultimate damage scales off the skill level, as well as the healing portion as well scales off the skill level, so that's also important. Now finally, her basic attack and assist needs to be leveled as well, because while she's in her dream state, she's doing that aftershock once every 8 seconds. It's going to summon ethereals at random. It could be from her basic attack, it could be from special, it could be from assist. So you want to level those up, not only for the damage, but the day's contribution as well. So yeah, X special, if you can get 1 to level 12, that is the most important, but everything else except dodge is just as important in Lucia doing what she can to support your team. So viewers that are planning to get Lucia and her signature engine, they've been asking me, do I need to change anything about Yixuan's discs due to the 20% max HP bonus? Can HP percentage main stats on disc 4, 5, scale better due to the max HP bonuses coming from Lucia and her signature engine? So I did the math for multiple Yixuans, one on the early access server, one on my Asia server, one on my America server. So they all have different initial HP. One has 18k, one has 21.6k, one has 19k. So I did all the math, and it's really easy to do the math, by the way. If you want to know, just ask me on stream how the formula works, how to calculate sheer force. Is really, or how to calculate max HP. Is really easy. But anyways, the slot 4 HP versus the crit damage with the substat, right? Keeping it fair with crit damage +1 roll, HP +1 roll with the crit damage slot 4 and HP slot 4. TLDR, all right? Simply put. And also I diluted the buffs. I added even more. Went over 300% crit damage by adding 150 more. For example, like Daily Assault gives a lot of crit damage, and still slot 4 crit damage is still winning. So in short, for M0 Yixuan, I did multiple different Yixuans, one with cracked discs, one with not so cracked discs, one with okay discs, and I added a lot of crit damage coming from other sources like Ju Fufu, Daily Assault. I packed it with crit damage over 300%, over 330, over 340, 350, and even still crit damage slot 4 wins. So basically how we geared Yixuan didn't change for slot 4. And as for Yixuan's main stats, slot 5 HP versus damage, ether damage, it is really close, damage winning out. So even adding Lucia in her signature engine didn't change the outcome. Slot 5 ether damage main stat is better, and it was close before Lucia, and now it's a little bit closer. So if your Yixuan has slot 4 crit damage, you can go with HP percentage on slot 5 if the substats rolled better. All right, so that's gonna be it for this video. If you are pulling Lucia, good luck. I wish you guys all the luck, and if you have any questions, drop by my stream. I'll see you guys in the next one.